Tonight, an eye-opening report about one of the keys to U.S. energy independence, liquefied natural gas known as LNG. It's plentiful in the U.S. and transported in specially built rail cars.
Yeah, tonight, Chief I-Team investigator Mike Magnolia is asking if those trains could have dangerous consequences for us here in South Florida.
An accident involving LNG could be challenging for firefighters because if it ignites, they can't dump water on it. And safety advocates are concerned an explosion could level several blocks or a whole town. Last year, the federal regulations for moving LNG on trains changed. Now the companies don't need special permits anymore, so they can move more of it with greater ease. But the Biden administration could bring back the old rules. And while that would be frustrating for some in the energy industry, it would be welcome news for the citizen groups who have been fighting this fight against what they call bomb trains. All of the locomotives for Florida's East Coast Rail are powered by liquefied natural gas, LNG for short, and the same potent fuel is also in tender cars found behind the engines. FEC converted its fleet in 2017. Now here's a quick lesson on how LNG is produced. Natural gas is taken from the ground, then it's run through these 4 filters for purification before it's chilled at negative 265 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, it becomes a colorless, odorless liquid, and it can be exported on ships. But to get to the ships, it can take a train. And that brings us here, to downtown Delray Beach, where trains carrying LNG whiz past the Pineapple Grove condos day and night. And Breanne Johnson and her girls stay here with Grandma during the winter, so she wants answers.
Just what it is and what happens if there was an accident. We're obviously, I don't know how many feet away, but yards away. We're pretty close to the tracks.
We measured. It's 33 yards.
It is a potential bomb for sure.
Fritz Edler is with Railroad Workers United, and the group wants LNG off of trains and far away from workers and passengers. Edler worked for Amtrak for most of his career and now speaks for the union on safety issues. He's particularly concerned that the FEC trains with LNG share the same rails as Brightline, high-speed passenger trains.
There's the specific question of LNG, and then there's the bigger question, the more important question of whether we're running the railroads in a safe way for any product.
For the record, Edler believes LNG isn't safe for the railways under any circumstances. LNG is carried in what are called DOT-113 containers, and trains can have 100 or more of these LNG cars, each with more capacity than what was allowed when the LNG railroad rules were made in 2015. In a federal lawsuit, the group Earth Justice claims 22 loaded LNG tanker cars have the same energy potential as the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And right now, 15 states are fighting to keep LNG trains out. But Florida and Alaska are running the only 2 pilot programs in the country where LNG is moving on trains.
As soon as somebody figures out that they can make money doing it, they will do it, and they will route it through your town.
About that, the money. LNG has lower emissions and lower costs than other fuel sources, so demand is high, and shipments of LNG can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So who's buying it? Well, Caribbean nations are quickly converting to LNG as they replace aging power grids, and a growing number of cruise lines are using it as a fuel because it reduces their carbon footprint, and if it spills on the water, it vaporizes, leaving behind no residue. But one of the reasons Edler is sounding the alarm, and it's a big reason, is because he's seen railroad accidents become disasters.
Well, the town of Lac-Mégantic got zero benefit from having that additional risk in their community.
Lac-Mégantic is a town in Canada. It was the scene of a terrible rail disaster in 2013. This accident did not involve LNG, but crude oil. The train derailed, the oil ignited, 47 people died, and 30 buildings were destroyed. The thing is, advocates say LNG is much safer to transport than crude oil, and they say LNG could not cause a Lac-Mégantic incident.
Folks should remember that natural gas is a very long, deep safety culture in our industry. We have multiple codes and standards. They apply to everything that we do.
Dan Gage is president of Natural Gas Vehicles for America. He's testified before Congress about the environmental advantages of LNG. He says politicians and political candidates gravitate towards solar and wind power, but he says LNG is more feasible if America wants to achieve energy independence and lower greenhouse gas emissions.
They argue for increased investment in solar and wind, and that's all well and good, but you have to remember that solar and wind are intermittent power sources. When the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, you don't get any electricity out of them.
But Gage's points don't resonate with Susan Meehill. She's the chairwoman for the Alliance for Safe Trains, a citizens watchdog group on the Treasure Coast trying to stop bomb trains.
The rulemaking changes say it's open season on every track in the country.
Meehill showed us location after location where the tracks pass right by schools and daycares. She and many other opponents are calling for a federal crash study on the LNG tank cars to subject them to collisions at 30 and 50 miles per hour to see how safe they really are.
Right on Florida East Coast Rail's website, it says they want to make this route right here a virtual LNG pipeline. They say it. So that's their intention and that's their plan, and it has been that way for a long time.
FEC did not respond to our request for an interview. The International Association of Firefighters and the National Association of Fire Marshals oppose LNG on trains. Something that came up a lot, though, during this investigation when I was talking to executives in the energy industry. They say folks would be a lot more concerned if LNG was moving on tractor trailers. They argue that moving it on trains is safer than big rigs on highways in rush hour. I'm Mike Magnoli, CBS 12 News.